Hello friends, my name is Chris Parks, also known as the artist Palehorse, and welcome to this first in a series of videos that I'll be recording. I wanted to open our time together with a prayer, an invocation. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, dearest friend, beloved God, great masters of self-realization, and great saints and sages of all traditions, I humbly and lovingly bow before you all. I invoke your presence. Magnetize us with your magnetic presence. Divine Mother, awaken your love in me, then teach me to awaken that love in all. May we light the fire of Nachiketa that burns out the ego and enables us to pass from fearful fragmentation into fearless fullness in the changeless whole. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace. Amen. So, welcome. And if you've made it past that threshold of the prayer without turning back, without hitting the dislike button and clicking the X on the page, welcome. I'm honored to be sharing this space with you, brave souls. It makes me think of the threshold guardians that flank the temples, the entrances to temples. In Thailand, there are these giant threshold guardians that guard the temples with swords, and they have faces of demons. And the way that I understand it is that these guardians, they guard the entrance to the temple. Those who are ready go beyond the threshold and can go inside and meditate and go beyond the known into the unknown. And so that's a lot like what is happening here with this video. This is a big threshold for me. To be honest, I'm slightly embarrassed always of the person I was the day before, things that I've said and done. I'm always embarrassed the next day, and the person that I was is always changing. So now I'm deciding to put this out on public record and record myself and all of my embarrassments and all of my flaws. And so this is what I'm doing. I'm passing beyond this threshold guardian. I like to think of the scene from the movie, The Never-Ending Story, where the hero Atreyu, he is at that passageway that is flanked by the two stone sphinxes with lasers for eyes, and only the worthy hero with pure heart can go beyond these threshold guardians without being destroyed. And so that's what it feels like a lot of times as we come across these new unknown realms. And this is an unknown realm for me, so I'm happy to have you with me on this journey. And I'm having to get over a lot of my insecurities and self-doubts by doing this, but I know that it'll be worth it, and it'll be something that I'll learn from, and hopefully others can learn from and gain some things as well. I've gained so much from other artists and creatives who have decided to go on podcasts and documentaries and record their journeys and tools and tips and things that they've used, rituals, talking about their daily routines. And I've learned so much by listening to other artists and other creatives. So I wanted to give back and do the same. As a selfless service is the way that I'm looking at it, is just wanting to share what I'm doing, get over my insecurities, and share what's working for me. And the reason I wanted to first talk about why, that is sort of why I'm creating this video series. And the what is going to be about the artwork that is being created. I want to talk about the reasons behind the work, why I'm creating the artwork, what it means to me, what the symbolism is in the pieces that are being created, and also what I learned during the process of working on the piece, and perhaps how, if you want to hang a poster or a painting or wear a t-shirt or a skateboard that I've created, if you're wearing these things or putting them on your wall, how can you use them in your lives as symbols for your own journey and for symbols of courage and to keep your mind focused on your goals and things like that. So I figured this would give me a good opportunity to expand on the artwork and really make these talks, these videos, a part of the offerings that I am putting out as an artist. And so the first piece, the first image that I'll be talking about today is actually a t-shirt design. It's a t-shirt. It's also a golden coin and an iridescent sticker, a set of these that are available now on my website. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the meaning behind it, because it is a very esoteric, it is a very spiritual idea. And I think it's something that deep down we all already know. And it's something that I am working on learning myself. I'm not coming in front of this camera pretending like I have it all together. I am very much a student, and I'm very much on a beginning of my spiritual journey. In this first episode, I wanted to talk too about my journey and how I got to where I'm at now, from being very much the transformation of me from 10 years to today is a completely different person. My nickname 10 years ago was Chris the Party Parks. I was the life of the party, and I was just out for adventure and fun times and laughs, and I'm still that person, but it was very much a different scene. I was into extremes. I was a straight edge metalhead turned to club partier and just I was interested in all kinds of different sensory pleasures and all of these things, and they led me on a journey, and I would like to use this first video to talk about that journey, as well as my journey as an artist. I began as a graphic designer, and really the thing that I really wanted to do most was I was creating t-shirts for brands in the mall, surf and skate companies, and I still create skateboards now, which is great. I've been able to work that even into my practice now of creating sacred art. But the journey over the years I wanted to talk a bit about as well, to kind of show the lineage of the timeline of how I got here. And spoiler alert, psilocybin has a lot to do with it. Plant medicine ceremonies and journeys with shaman were a great catalyst of that. And I wanted to also talk about in this first video this period of the pandemic, the lockdown, how I've used that time, how I've felt it as a wonderful blessing to have this time of lockdown. I've really felt like I've been in a cocoon and am just now emerging as a different creature. And so this will be my way to sort of come out of the cocoon and to start talking about these things, and hopefully to be able to point others to a lot of interesting things that they can explore. I've explored so many different paths and techniques and tools and books over my time, and I owe a lot to artists and authors and creative people and entrepreneurs who have sat in front of cameras like this and just spilled their guts without worrying about what people will think. So that's what I want to do now. And so the first artwork that I'll be talking about, you can see, put it here on the screen. This is a t-shirt and a coin that will come together, that will be sold together, that are available now. And this is the secret of prosperity. This is based on the teachings of my guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, my guru who I have taken discipleship with about a year and a half ago. And I'll get more into that later. Paramhansa Yogananda was a fully realized being who lived here in the US, in California he was here from, I believe, 1920 till his death in 1952. And so this shirt is based on his teachings. He said that the secret of prosperity, you can think of it as a triangle. On one side, right sweetness. On the other side, calmness. And at the base, happiness. And this is something that I feel within. This is something that I am beginning to practice with. I'm so intrigued by. I've been someone who throughout the years has been never really that great at saving money, earning money, having a really stable bank account. As an artist, I'm sure a lot of you can relate. This is not a profession that you get into for stability, and we're always seeking and searching in order to become the greatest artists that we can possibly become. We always need to be changing and shifting, and as Joseph Campbell says, follow your bliss. And that is what I've always been doing, following my bliss. I didn't always know that term, and I've not always been conscious about what it is, but I've been following my heart, and I could never really stay stagnant. I was always shifting and changing, and God bless my wife who has stuck with me through all of these changes. I know it hasn't been easy, and especially to be with someone who is just daily becoming a different person. And so I'm very fortunate, she and I are like opposites of the yin yang. We are opposites, but we work so well together. I've learned so much from her, and she's given me a lot of confidence. And that's something that I've noticed in a lot of documentaries about artists, is they always have that other half behind them that is a lot of times very different from them, but complementary. And I'm very grateful to have her in my life, and a lot of other people in my life who have been inspirations and supports for me. So many other artists and friends have helped me along the way. And so this is not something that I come to lightly or that I think I have all together. I'm at this phase in my career now where I'm making another huge change coming out of this pandemic. I am transforming from an artist who was doing mostly commercial illustration work. I don't always post all of my work that I do for advertising agencies and a lot of brands and entertainment companies and things like that. That is how I have been earning my living up until this point. And I have now felt the calling to stop working on advertising illustrations, to stop working on food and beverage brands and entertainment companies, and work for all kinds of different, being sort of an illustrator for hire. Although I am so grateful for all of my clients and my illustration agent. I was with Bernstein and Andrulli, my top choice for illustration agents. And I've worked with so many great brands and agencies and music festivals and bands. And, it's been a wonderful time working on these things, and actually just dreams of mine that I've moved on and moved through. And now I'm feeling the call to focus, to really put all of my efforts into meditation and creating artwork that is really coming from my heart and coming from inspiration through meditation and scripture. And I'll be getting into that a lot more in this first episode here. But to continue talking about the symbolism in this shirt, this is what I am using as a way to take this leap of faith. This is a way to go beyond, go from the unknown, go from the known into the unknown. The tag in this shirt says, "Fear not." And the tag behind the inside neck label says, "Fear not." It says, let's see. I'm trying to remember it here. I don't even have it in front of me. The tag for that. I'll remember that here in a second. Here, so the other symbolism in this shirt is above sweetness. You see the lotus, and the symbol of the lotus is this idea that the lotus grows from the mud. The lotus's origins are in the mud. And that is like us. We begin in the mud of our upbringing, the mud of all of our trials, the mud of our delusion of who we were, transforming and growing, moving and growing out of the mud, growing upwards towards the sun to become a lotus, and the petals of the lotus opening toward the sun. And that lotus is still sustained by the mud of its origins. It's not pushing those away. It's not wishing that they were never there. It's being sustained by them, but not looking back, looking forward, looking upwards toward the sun, and and receiving the light of the sun, becoming that lotus, and to not look back and in nostalgia for the mud, as there's a French saying, is nostalgia for the mud. And a lot of times we have that as we are pushing forward, as we are realizing more and more our dreams, and we're following our bliss and making good habits and making good new progress on our path, we will have this equal and opposite force, this reaction, this nostalgia for the mud, or this death wish that will keep trying to pull us back. But we can invoke this sweetness within us and remember that we are pushing toward higher things. And now I'm remembering the tag in the shirt. This is a quote from Swami Kriyananda. He says, "Fear not, peace awaits you in the unknown." And that is really what we're doing a lot of times. We're leaping out in faith as artists. For me, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I get a sense, when I go beyond my ego and I feel the grandness of what I am capable of if I am unafraid and my higher self is not identified with the limitations of this small physical body. I get a sense of the grandeur of what's possible about realizing my highest purpose as a soul here on earth. And my ego gets scared. It gets scared. And that happens a lot of times for us. We get scared and nervous, and we don't continue taking these steps. So we need to invoke this sweetness and then this calmness this calmness within. We do this through meditation, practicing meditation a lot. There are multiple ways, as the Bhagavad Gita says. Not all are meant for a life of meditation. Some are meant for a life of service. And some realize the self beyond the body through a life of selfless service, fully. Those are very special, rare few souls, but some are born in this world to give freely of themselves in selfless service. And this is that calmness, this calmness within that we attain. Some on this journey who are called to this selfless service can attune to this sweetness, to this calmness, to this happiness, no matter what is going on, no matter how many obstacles are against them. But others of us, like myself, we use meditation to train the mind to feel this sweetness, this calmness, this inner happiness beyond our fears and beyond our doubts. And that's what this triangle represents. This swirling 3 balls of energy here on the right is a symbol in Buddhism. I see it, I actually don't know if this is right, but I have a sense that the feeling for me is that this represents the 3 energies, or the 3 gunas. These 3 energies known in the East as tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic energies. As I understand it, my basic small understanding of it so far is that the rajasic energy is a downward pulling energy, and that all of us at all times as humans on this earth are being dominated by one of these 3 energies. Rajasic energy, downward pulling. We can ask ourselves in any situation, which energy are we being dominated by in this moment? Downward pulling energy that leads us into lower and lower consciousness that is not beneficial, that is pulling us deeper into the mud, away from the sun. Rajasic energy, or tamasic energy, which is like a laziness or an inertia that is keeping us stuck from moving and not making any progress. So often this tamasic energy is prevalent in us and keeping us trapped where we are. And also the next is sattvic energy. This is upward pulling energy. This is elevating consciousness. This is high frequency energy that can dominate our lives. And in each moment, asking ourselves, which are we attuning to? Which is dominating us now? We can always find this sattvic energy. And also knowing that, for me, as I put this symbol above calmness on the design, it is, for me, I think about, and I've heard talked about, these 3 energies are always controlling all of the beings here on earth. And that we actually are infinite selves, we are infinite souls riding along in these physical bodies. And these physical bodies are simply being controlled by these 3 energies. The more that we are in tune and identified with that higher self, the more sattvic energy is running our lives. But when we're unconscious and we're caught up in these lives and in these stories and in these little bodies, and we are just being thrown around by these 3 forces of energy. You can think about it too. I like to think about the symbol of a guitar string. When you pluck a guitar string, it goes up and down and center. It's these three energies that are always dominating our speech, our thoughts, our actions. And until we become conscious, then they are just tossing us around like a ship on the sea. And so we can give this to God. We can give everything to God that we have done, that we have said, and we can have this calmness, and we can attune back to the higher self within. And so for me, that's the symbol, the reason why I've put that symbol above calmness. And at the base, there's some Sanskrit below it. It's the Sanskrit for the Indian term, actually the Indian word for God, Satchit Ananda, consciousness, truth, bliss. Or as Yogananda defines it, he says it is that God is all-pervading, eternal, ever-new bliss, this omnipresent, infinite bliss. That is God. And when we have realized that, then we have realized God. That's how we know. And in psychedelic journeys, in my work with Kriya Yoga, which I'll talk about a little later, we can feel, and we can get a foot in the door. We can experience this experience of Satchitananda, this bliss that awaits us all when we are done with this identification with the little bodies. And this is that happiness that we can feel in deep meditation. This is not an emotion. This is not a fake happiness. This is not putting on a smile when you're actually feeling completely the opposite. This is getting centered, attuning to this. We can, obviously, it's not, this triangle doesn't mean that we no longer have emotions, that we no longer cry, that we no longer feel fear. But this is the antidote to fear. This is the antidote to sadness. And we can be great. We can be great friends and great actors in this movie as we are going through all kinds of situations, but inwardly feeling this sweetness, this calmness, and this happiness, and that is the secret of success, and that we decide now that we will be happy, that we are happy no matter what. And I wanted to read some words from Paramhansa Yogananda. This is from an incredible book. It is called How to Be Happy All the Time. This is a collection of writings from Paramhansa Yogananda. He says, "Persons of strong character are usually the happiest. They do not blame others for troubles that can be traced to their own actions and lack of understanding. They know that no one has the power to add to their happiness or detract from it, unless they themselves allow the adverse thoughts or wicked actions of others to affect them. A strong determination to be happy will help you. Do not wait for your situation to change, thinking therein lies the trouble. Try to be happy under all circumstances. If your happiness sometimes seems dependent on certain conditions, then change your circumstances so that you will be happy all the time. Don't be bound by set rules, as there are exceptions to every rule. Perhaps you say, if this or that happens, I shall be very contented. Do not wait. Snatch the highest prize of happiness that is within your reach now. For the will-o'-the-wisp of hoping for happiness and thereby postponing it leads you through many sloths of disappointment. Happiness grows by what feeds it. Learn to be happy by being happy all the time. John said, "If I get money, I shall be happy." After he became wealthy, he said, "I shall be happy if I get rid of my acute indigestion." His indigestion was cured, but he thought, "If I get a wife, I shall be happy." Marriage brought him nothing but unhappiness. His second marriage was worse than the first. He thought that he would be happy if he divorced his second wife also. So he did. Now, at the age of 70, he thought, "I shall be happy. I shall never be happy until I can be youthful again. In this way," he said, "I shall never be happy unless I can be youthful again." In this way, people try, but they never reach their goal of happiness. Make up your mind that you will be happy whether you are rich or poor, healthy or unhealthy, happily married or unhappily married, young or old, smiling or crying. Do not wait for yourself, your family, your surroundings to change before you can be happy within yourself. Make up your mind to be happy within yourself right now, wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you are, right now, whatever you are, and wherever you are. Om. Those words are so inspiring to me. It really helps put this into perspective and what this is asking of us and what this is revealing to us. This triangle, this secret of prosperity is the quest, the goal. It is what I'm questing for. This secret of prosperity, there's a quote that I love from Swami Kriyananda. He says, "The secret of prosperity is happiness. For a determination simply to be happy attracts prosperity. Happiness is, at the same time, the best definition of prosperity." Reflection. And that is what we're working on, is this prosperity that we seek is the highest goal, self-realization. Before self-realization, before mastering this, becoming completely free from the body, the shipwreck of the body, as Yogananda says, from being shipwrecked on this body to expansion into feeling that the entire infinite universe is our body. We must first learn to master this physical universe. And that's what we're talking about here, is mastery over the mind, mastery of our thoughts, learning to quiet the mind, open the heart, to master this inner world, to become attuned to our guru. I believe, as I learned from Ram Dass, and his talks about his guru Maharaji in Be Here Now, and in all his talks that I've been listening to over the years, I have found that I believe that everyone has a guru. Everyone has an enlightened master that they harmonize with, that is their vibration, that will lead them to eternal, lasting happiness beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the senses. And this guru within can teach us and take us, and we can devote ourselves to having this inner guru. As Ram Dass says, I thought that I was the captain of my ship, and now he is the captain of my ship. When challenges come up, I ask him and he decides. And that is what I am attuning to with this path of taking discipleship with my guru Paramhansa Yogananda. And that is what is guiding me now. I know it may sound incredibly strange It sounded strange to me when I first heard it, so believe me, it sounds strange coming out of my mouth now. But I just wanted to share that in a good way, plant seeds. And I'll put links to these talks by Ram Dass and beautiful music by East Forest that puts some of his teachings and his talks to music. This secret of prosperity, Swami Kriyananda says another secret of prosperity, which is symbolized here in this design by the hand holding the paintbrush as a symbol of creativity. Creativity and perseverance, never giving up, continually trying over and over in new creative ways. And that's what this symbolizes. Using our creativity, knowing that if we continue trying and we continue seeking inspiration, that creativity and perseverance will bring us prosperity in life and beyond the body. This triangle in the center, I decided to make a fiery triangle with the symbol of Om, the Sanskrit symbol Om, the syllable Om in the center. This symbol for me, this fiery triangle, I am using as a symbol of keeping these truths burning in our hearts, ever burning, ever turning our minds on God and on these truths and on our goals and our mantras. And so this is why I have created the gold coin. I needed something. I needed this gold coin that I could put in my pocket that would remind me of my aim, remind me of what I am seeking and what I am working on, and this mantra of sweetness, of calmness, of happiness, of Sat Chitananda. And this gold coin is for a reminder of that, so that whenever you put your hand in your pocket, you will remember this. Whenever you're feeling tight, whenever you're feeling afraid, whenever you're feeling that those threshold guardians will strike you down with their laser eyes, you reach into your pocket and you feel this gold coin that you've been given on your journey, and you remember your meditations, you remember this calmness that you have inside, this sweetness and this happiness. And that's what ennobles us to become heroes with pure hearts that can walk fearlessly past this new passageway, this new threshold, without being destroyed. And we can confidently and courageously move forward. That's why I created this coin. And the twin serpents at the bottom of the design, they represent the Kundalini energy, the two Ida and the Pingala channels in the nervous system, in the subtle spine as they move up, like the caduceus, the symbol of the caduceus that we have as our medical symbol. This is what the snakes represent. It is raising the Kundalini in dedicated meditation practice, raising this Kundalini energy up, moving us out of our fears and our lower base chakras center, moving us up from the lower chakras through the heart, up through the throat, up into the spiritual eye. So the two symbols there below and above are the root chakra and the third eye chakra, moving this energy into the seat of superconscious awareness at the point between the eyebrows. And that is what we do in meditation. And in my YouTube channel here, I have lots of meditations that I've been recording. That is another threshold that I had to pass beyond. When I started giving those guided meditations, I felt the same way that I felt before I started recording this conversation, this talk today. I didn't think that I could do it. I didn't think I was worthy of doing it. Who am I? But one thing led to another. Friends started coming over to my studio when I was meditating. I had my assistant, Kat Gomez. She was working with me in the studio, and we would work late nights, and I meditate at night. And so if I was meditating, she was meditating with me, and we were using recorded guided meditations at that time. And I was really happy to have someone sharing with me. I was practicing for many years meditating, and I didn't tell anybody about it. It was like a guilty pleasure for me. If I was meditating and someone came into the studio, I'd pack up my things as quickly as possible and wouldn't let anybody see me. It was something so different from my life and every other friend that I had. Friends would make fun of me about it if I brought it up. So it was something that I really kept to myself and that I was working on in secret until Kat Gomez started meditating with me. She's an incredible artist and had been an incredible assistant to me, and we still work on murals together when she's in town. And so she started meditating with me that way, and then when she moved away, then other friends, my friend Daniel Barojas, started meditating with me in my studio, and he's also a great friend that when he moved to the area introduced me to ayahuasca shamans, medicine men that were coming and leading ceremonies in my area. So I'm very grateful for meeting him. He was meditating with me in my studio, and then others began coming. And I no longer have the studio space. Before the lockdowns, left the studio space, and now I'm in my new kind of home studio that has been put together here. And so we were just meeting and listening to guided meditations from Ram Dass, doing Wim Hof breathing, which I love, great pranayama exercise. I got to meet Wim Hof at one of his workshops in Miami, put us in ice, taught us the Wim Hof method. It's a wonderful, I'll put links to that. I love introducing people to that method. But we were practicing this pranayama breathing, listening to guided meditations together. And from there, just more it was, sometimes we'd have 10 or sometimes 14 of us together meditating. That was so different from me. I feel so blessed to have friends to meditate with now and to share this with. It's so much better to be able to share it. And that began the journey there. And from there, now that I had friends that I was sort of leading, I wasn't guiding the meditations then, but I was still introducing a lot of friends to meditation practice. And I would talk about how these things are helping me in my journey. And then that led me to really, really needing to take this seriously. Before it was just me. Now I am becoming somewhat of a teacher for my friends. And so I really needed to find a teacher myself, dedicated teacher. And that's what led me into the path and the practice of where I'm at now. I'll kind of get into that a little bit here shortly. But moving on through the rest of this design, the opposites, the yin-yang symbols on the left and the right. I had heard one of the guests on the Aubrey Marcus podcast. He had said, and I'm forgetting his name now, apologies, but he said something that really resonated with me. And it was about becoming in tune or in harmony with the song of our lives. And that is what our karma, all of the situations that arise, all of the people that we meet, all of the challenges and things in our lives are teaching us and helping us grow and putting us more and more in tune with the harmony of our life, the harmony of the song of our lives. There is a song that we can move into this harmony. I like to think about animals who are completely free from ego and how they are in tune with what we call instinct. What is instinct? And we as humans, like the fall of man, as you may think, the fall of man where we became fully identified with physical bodies, we have imaginations, and we have our own will, and we can dominate this planet, change it. We can change it to look like our imaginations. We can live in a completely new reality inside our minds. And that put us out of harmony with the song of our lives. But that is what we are meant to do. We are meant to live these lives, go through, play with this world, this VR, interactive, multi-sensory video game. We are meant to come here and explore all avenues and to explore, the way that they teach us, the Hindu teachings and teachings in India, that we come back over and over and over and over and over in different new bodies, probably very similar to the last one, learning and growing, trying, looking everywhere for happiness, seeking all different sense pleasures for happiness, seeking power, seeking fame. They say that if in your life you are not seeking these pleasures or happiness, you have no interest in seeking happiness through money or through power, then you've already done that in a past life and found out it doesn't work, so you switch to sex, you switch to something else, you switch to experiences, and we need to go through all of these things. But we can, once we become conscious, we can begin to burn up this karma, and we can move quickly through without needing to repeat these old past delusions, and we can move quickly into realizing why we were created, to go beyond these sense pleasures, and to realize that the joy, the bliss that comes from within, that comes from completing the circuit from the higher self to the lower self and completely obliterating the identification with the little body, that bliss that arises, all sense pleasures pale in comparison. And I know this because I have experienced it in my psychedelic journeys. I've experienced it through Kriya Yoga. But with those psychedelic experiences, and currently, in my beginning as a student in these things, I get a foot in the door for short moments, and then I'm back into the limitations of the physical body. The psilocybin trip wears off. The bufo experience wears off. The ayahuasca journey comes to an end, and I get caught up into the little self, the fears, the doubts, and I'm back again. But the goal is, remember, it is ever pervading, eternal, ever new bliss is the goal. And so that is what we're working on through meditation and through these guided meditations. These are based on what I'm learning through my teachers at ananda.org. And I guess now is a good time to really quickly go through my journey. I'm going to just give a a high-level overview of how I got to where I'm at now. I started kind of like putting together a loose timeline. I'm so bad at dates, but I was really looking back at my life and thinking about the different books and the different catalysts that helped me move through life since 2000. I guess it must have started in 2004 or 5 when I had a friend, my friend Chris Lee. He was traveling to Thailand so long ago, and he had already made a lot of journeys to Thailand and I believe Cambodia and other places back then. I was young and I hadn't even been barely, out of the state. I hadn't been to California or New York yet, and he was talking about his trips to Thailand and Cambodia and Laos, and it sounded so fascinating. And so my wife and I decided that back then we would go really bite the bullet and go on this just trip to Thailand. I remember when my wife was saying that we should do it, that was a threshold for me. I was scared and nervous about leaving the country back then. So this was a big step for me. So in 2004 or 5, we went to Bangkok, Thailand. And at that point in my life, I would consider myself an atheist. I grew up going to my parents' church. I grew up around dogmatic Christians, and I grew up around a religion that I didn't see any power in. And I kind of grew out of my what sort of childish naivete, I guess you would say, that I had. And when I started taking college courses and started reading books, I was gravitating towards, books like Richard Dawkins and more, just books that were about the small self and soul freedom, and not soul freedom, but about the little self, and being very much a materialist and believing that when the body dies, that's it, that's the end. And so and I really had a chip on my shoulder about religion. I thought it was all the same. I thought it lacked power, and I thought it was for controlling people, and for that it was the source of wars. And I really had no interest in religion or spiritual practice. So when I was in Thailand, though, these temples and these guardian giants that I mentioned earlier, these epic murals of animal and monkey armies in epic battles against demons, and the 10-headed demon Ravana and King Rama, I was just blown away by this artwork and by the beautiful ornate details of the Thai temples. And these just, I felt the transcendence there when I was inside these spaces, and the giant Buddhas and the beautiful gardens. And at that time, I was just in awe of it, and I loved it so much. I loved the culture of Thailand, and that made a huge impression on me. But I dared not go any further. I didn't go beyond the threshold into wanting to actually explore what these symbols meant. What were these stories? Who is Hanuman, the monkey in these paintings and in these beautiful statues? I didn't go any further into wondering where it came from and what it meant and how I might be able to use it in my life. that didn't come till much, much later. But this monkey Hanuman, images of him and people mentioning him or hearing about him followed me through my life. I ended up getting a tattoo of Hanuman when I barely knew the story. But this monkey Hanuman just was following me through my life through synchronicities and kept intriguing me and kept intriguing me. And it was in 2009 where I listened to my first podcast. I didn't know what a podcast was, but the Joe Rogan Experience podcast in 2009. It was in December 2009. I listened to the JRE episode number 1, and it really cracked me open. You know, he was talking about psychedelics. He was talking about ancient civilizations. He was talking about, conspiracy theories and aliens and Bigfoot, and all of these things were just so interesting to me. Fringe science, or talking about just really interesting science and having scientists on and different guests and authors. And I just became so fascinated, and I loved telling other people about these things that I was learning. I was reading new books, and it just became a sort of portal into so many other things. So I became very grateful for this medium of the podcast. From there, I discovered other people doing podcasts like Duncan Trussell, and Duncan Trussell was talking about Ram Dass, and he was talking about meditation, and he was talking about Hindu scripture, these epic tales of Hindu scripture like the Ramayana and the Bhagavad Gita. Ramayana is where Hanuman is the story of Hanuman, the story of Rama and Sita. And he started telling stories about, these esoteric mythologies, and talking about Ram Dass, and that made me interested in Ram Dass, and I started listening to talks with Ram Dass, and I started reading his books, listening to his books on Audible while I was drawing. And man, those were so powerful to me. I didn't get, I really didn't get it or understand it. But as Ram Dass said in one of his talks, he said, "It's important for you to know that people like me exist." And really, previously to hearing him speak, I didn't know that people like him existed. I didn't know that there were people who were actually content, people who were actually happy here on earth, who were following the guidance of an inner guru like the Force in this movie Star Wars, like Obi-Wan Kenobi is guiding them through, beyond the grave. And that really was planted some incredible seeds for me back in 2009. I was from then too, from Joe Rogan and from these others, Ram Dass, all talking about psilocybin, DMT, ayahuasca. These things, as soon as I heard them, they just set off huge sounding bells in my mind of what is this? How do I find these plants, and how do I start using them? Things like LSD. And so as soon as I became interested in it, wouldn't you know it, somebody shows up and starts telling me they had DMT experiences, or that they have psilocybin mushrooms that they would give to me. And then I discovered people like Terence McKenna, he became my trip guide for working with these substances. Terence McKenna, when I looked back later on and realized that I was following this person, it shook me a little bit, because I was following his guidance, and really it was perfect for me. I mean, it was uprooted my life and led to a lot of, it was a rocky start, but man, it sure made me interested in life again and cracked open so many new portals to things. So I was listening to talks by Terence McKenna, and the way that he was describing his journeys were so intriguing to me. So I was following his advice. He would say things like, the problem with psilocybin is that not that people are taking too much, it's that they are taking far too little. And he would say that he recommended these heroic doses of mushrooms of 5 grams or more, and that you should do it alone in the dark. And I started doing it that way, lock myself in a room alone in the dark with 5 grams of mushrooms, and that would just take me on these journeys. And I feel like I worked out so much karma. I opened myself up to whatever would come, and these experiences were so shocking to me. They helped me to understand and ask, as someone later that I would find, Graham Hancock, he would say that psychedelics allow us to now ask new and profound questions about the nature of reality, the nature of this universe that we live in. And that was what was happening to me. I was asking these profound questions, and I was getting profound experiential understanding of things that I had only heard or read about, and getting these grand visions of going beyond the body and merging with the self. I was working through a lot of fears. I was working through a lot of karma. I was being given wonderful visions about how I could become a better person, how I could interact with my friends and family in new ways, in better ways. I was getting inspiration for artwork, of how to think about being a creative, how to attune to more inspiration. And so psilocybin, I love how Ram Dass puts it. He says, psilocybin is my friend. Psilocybin put me on the spiritual path, in the way that he says it. Psilocybin is my friend, and I feel the same way. It really put me on the spiritual path. It began as a curiosity. It began as something where I was just really enjoying the visions and enjoying all of it, enjoying it as a really, it's like going down these higher and higher slides at the water park, is really what it felt like. And I started with, I became very interested in, it was a book before Ram Dass was Ram Dass, he was Richard Alpert, and he wrote this book with Timothy Leary called The Psychedelic Experience. And the Psychedelic Experience was like a bit of a translation of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It was translated into trip language because Timothy Leary and Ram Dass, when they were taking these high doses of psilocybin and LSD, they were putting the pieces together. When they were reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they noticed that this book is somehow describing the phases of the trip experience. The phases were clearly outlined, and experiences that were written about in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Bhagavad Gita were experiences that they were having on their trips. And the same was true for me. I was reading these books, and they were incredibly familiar at the beginning already, because I had experienced these things through my psychedelic journeys. So that book, The Psychedelic Experience, became very fascinating to me, and the Tibetan Book of the Dead then became very fascinating to me. And as I was reading that book, and then I would have psychedelic journeys, I would use the teachings in that book. They would come alive as my guide, almost like a cheat manual in a video game. It would teach me, you know, when I would come up against these demonic forces, these very challenging situations in the trip journey, that I would know that these things are arising, that they are not demons there for my demise, that they are actually there for my benefit. And that if I would look at these challenges and I would face them head on and say, I know you're my guru, you're my teacher. These challenges and these terrible, terrifying situations I would face in my trips would transform into beauty and to love, and they would allow me to pass through into the next phase. And so sacred scriptures, esoteric sacred scriptures just became my love and my joy. So reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or, you know, listening to audio. When I say reading, I listen to them. I absorb them. I when I'm drawing, when I'm creating, when I'm concepting things, I'm listening to scripture. I'm listening to books by spiritual people, from Audible, from YouTube, and it was the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, the Katha Upanishad. These things were just so transformative for me. And I heard something a while back that I love sharing with friends about sort of how to think about esoteric. It's helpful to me, so maybe it'll be helpful to you. This term esoteric writing, you can think about it like in the movie The Karate Kid, when Mr. Miyagi, Daniel's son's sensei, is telling him that he must wax the car and paint the fence, and he's putting him through this just countless hours of waxing the car and painting the fence. He doesn't know why he's doing it. He's a bit, just going through the motions of doing it. But then when he finds himself confronted and he is in a fight, all of a sudden he's blocking punches and kicks that are being thrown at him by, it's like the way that it works is that these things that we're reading as, talks and journeys about monkeys and demons battling in these epic tales, all of a sudden something comes up in our life and we are blocking punches and kicks. We are knowing what to do because we read these stories. And this has been so fascinating for me to be able to read these stories and then have them come alive in my life. And just to rewind the timeline a little bit, before I really was diving deeply into the sacred scriptures, there was a lot of psychedelic journeys and a lot of working with so many other tools and techniques that I was looking into. It was in 2012 that I really started finding authors like Joseph Campbell, like Don Miguel Ruiz. Don Miguel Ruiz, his books are so beautiful, wonderful introduction into what he has books called The Four Agreements, The Fifth Agreement, Mastery of Love, I believe is the other one. And he has another incredible book about the Toltec way of life, Toltec shamanism. His books were so great. And it was in 2013 that I had a full hip replacement surgery. I was actually born with congenital hip dysplasia. It's a disease that I was born with that deformed my hip, my joint, my socket, and the ball and socket, and it made it so that doctors were telling my parents when I was born that I would never walk on my own until I was, 25 and could have a full hip replacement surgery. But they were wrong. I got into contact with the Shriners Hospital when I was very young, and had some really life-changing surgeries through that hospital, and I owe a great deal to the Shriners Hospital. That also really made me intrigued with Masonic culture, and these guys walking around wearing fezzes. It's an interesting sort of part of my childhood with the Shriners, and I owe so much to the treatment that I was able to receive and the surgeries that I got for free. And so, but in 2013, I was able to get a full hip replacement surgery. And this allowed me, I was working as an illustrator full-time, very busy schedule, and just starting to find, just starting to take mushroom journeys at this point, and just really starting to learn about meditation and being very interested in it, but not really diving all the way in yet. 2013, I had this hip replacement surgery that gave me about 8 weeks where I could take naps every day. I didn't watch any TV. I was reading interesting books. I was practicing with meditation techniques that I wanted to start practicing with. And I had some CDs of audio by Alex Gray, where he had these audio CDs that were guided visualization journeys with shamanic drumming, where he was guiding us through visionary realms and teaching us how to invoke our imaginations to see beings and see imagery that we would then begin drawing. And so I was using this new way of creating during that time. I also started practicing with something that someone on a podcast was talking about, lucid dreaming, waking up within the dream state, and learning to do that consciously, using tools and techniques. They're guided hypnosis or different techniques, like throughout your waking life, always asking yourself, am I dreaming right now? And looking at your hands and counting your fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Am I dreaming? Getting into a habit of doing that over and over in your life. And then you would find that in your actual dream state, if you made it a habit, you would stop and you would pause in the dream and go, am I dreaming? Count your fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whoa. And that would trigger you to trigger your lucid consciousness, to realize that you were in a dream. And the podcast, I can't remember the guest, but something that stuck with me, he said that the next thing that you need to learn is how to calm the dreamer, because the dreamer, the body that's laying in the bed, when the dreamer becomes excited, wow, I'm inside a dream realm. I am lucid in looking and physically inside of a dream. The heart starts to pace, the pace of the heart starts to increase, and the body that's laying on the bed wakes up, and then you get popped out of the dream. So we have to learn to calm the dreamer. And so I was practicing with these things. I was using binaural beats, and I was using ways to over and over imagine these dream realms over and over in my mind, so that when I would find myself inside the dream in these familiar places, I would know that it was a dream. I was using this audio that would have me walk through a series of steps every night as I was going to sleep or as I was taking naps during my hip replacement surgery recovery. I would just repeat these these visualizations over and over using my imagination. Like one of them was I would be on a sandy beach, feeling the sand in my toes, feeling the air, smelling the ocean, feeling the breeze, and seeing a boat on the shore, a small boat, and walking over and getting inside the boat and starting to row the boat across the water, seeing a small island coming into my awareness, and then getting closer and closer to that island, and then docking the boat on the island, and then walking into the forest through a canopy of trees, through a path, and walking through that canopy and finding a pool of water, and laying and floating inside this glistening iridescent pool of water, and then going and exploring a house that was on the island, a little cottage, and what does that look like? What does the door look like? What is the interior? What does the artwork on the walls look like? And I was doing this over and over, and until I found myself on this island, exploring this island, surfing the waves, flying around the island, and just realizing that I could do and go and explore anything that I wanted to. My imagination, I could think it, and then I could see it in front of me. I could feel it, and then it would happen. And that realization just changed my life, my world. If you knew me back then, you would probably hear me babbling about lucid dreaming, and I wanted to know who else was doing this. Does anybody know about this? How come we're not taught that we can do this? You can go on the most wildest, greatest, amazing vacations with no money, just time for sleeping and a comfortable place to put your body. That's all you need. And it was just amazing. And funny enough, though, that really, I'm married, and I was using all these tools. Like I had this eye mask that had, it would be timed so that when you would move into REM sleep time, it would start flashing lights on your eyes as you would fall asleep, and you would get used to the patterns and the rhythms of light, and learn to wake up in dreams. And I had headphones on with binaural beats playing, and that's kind of a really annoying thing to be laying next to someone who is like practicing lucid dreaming and got all these contraptions on. So I kind of abandoned that practice after a little while, and really moved into meditation practice, just because it was more practical, and I was finding that I could experience these things through meditation, that I could practice in the evenings at my studio or in the mornings. Evening meditations have always been more powerful for me, just the way that my life is and my mind works. So I was also practicing during that time with astral projection techniques. There's an incredible series of books by an author named Robert Monroe called Journeys Out of the Body, and he was creating these binaural beats that were for out-of-body experiences. And so I was practicing with these, and man, proving to myself, it's one thing to read a book. I always, I wanted to read the book, and then I wanted to prove to myself if this was real or not. So maybe hearing me talk about it makes you interested enough. I'm telling you, I'm telling you these things were real for me. I experienced them firsthand. All of these things that I'm talking to you about, I didn't only read in books, but I put to practice and discovered them for myself. So maybe that sparks an interest for you. I'll continue sort of like putting out these rabbit holes and different things that you can explore. I'll put links to different things that you can look for to start practicing these on your own. And so from there, I also discovered an author named Stephen Pressfield. Wrote a book called The War of Art, and he's got another more current one called The Artist's Journey. The War of Art, man, it's like, for me, was the holy Bible for beginning an art career professionally. I don't know how many people I've told that up to friends. I've recommended that book to, and how many friends have come back and just say, like, I listened to that over and over, and it's totally changing my life and my career. Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. Check it out if you don't know it. That also was a huge catalyst in shaping and shifting the way that I was working. From there, I discovered, I was working also with a book called The Artist's Way, Julian McCarthy, I believe, and morning pages, where I was writing down 3 pages of stream of consciousness notes every morning. Just wake up, brush your teeth, whatever, start your day with writing 3 pages of stream of consciousness. Don't care what it is. You can complain for the first 2 pages, and then you'll see yourself getting out all those complaints, and then realizing that there are insights and intuition, and there are messages coming to you that are all buried under your fears, your worries, your doubts, your complaining. All of these layers that we have when we wake up, our fear, the feeling of the weight of the world, our feeling of the energy that is just taking over us. If we can get all that out onto the pages, we can find ourselves becoming much lighter and more open for inspiration. I highly recommend that book, The Artist's Way. It's a program. It's, when you open it up, you see at the beginning, you sign your name. I, Chris Parks, whatever it says, will complete this. It is a commitment, and it is something that you have to fully be ready for and to do it, because it will drastically shape your life if you do it. That led me very much into taking some big risks, and I started creating these, this one thing led to another. I had an art show, and I met this other artist and photographer who goes by Modern Myth. I also started hanging out with a friend. He goes by Monster, and Modern Myth introduced Monster and I to all of the independent wrestling that was going on in Ybor City, Tampa Bay area here where I live. I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida, but just, half an hour away, there were independent wrestling going on with some amazing, talented male and female wrestlers and luchadors. And this area of Tampa Bay is actually, it's a haven for wrestlers coming from all over the world, because it used to be the scouting area and training grounds for the WWE, FTW, and NXT, all in this area. So we would have some of the highest talent in independent wrestling come to just wrestle in small bars here. And so we started watching and meeting some of these wrestlers, and one thing led to another. Monster and I, we love talking about ancient civilizations and mythology and spiritual practice and astral projection and lucid dreaming and all of this stuff, and psychedelic journeys. We became just super fascinated with all of these things, and as we were watching these wrestling matches and really imagining, our imaginations really became cracked open to. I became very interested in lucha libre from some travels, going to lucha libre matches in Tijuana. My wife and I, while I was visiting some clients in San Diego, and then we went over the border into Tijuana in 2009, which is when no one should have been going. No white people should be going to Tijuana. My wife is Chinese and Indian, but white people like me and us foreigners, we should not be. And actually, a lot of people in Tijuana were, if they could leave, they were getting out, because that was known as one of the most dangerous times to be in Tijuana during the height of the drug cartel. Violence and these sort of things. We sort of, back then, our trips to Thailand and all of this, we had a sort of a wild nature about us where we felt a little bit, I don't know, naively invincible. And so we got into Tijuana. There are not many street vendors, not much going on there. It was a bit of a ghost town, coming over, a bit eerie. And we found the stadium where there was a lucha libre match happening that night, Saturday night, and just started asking cab drivers if they would take us to the lucha libre stadium. And so my wife and I, and actually my young niece, we all went across the border and went to watch lucha libre wrestling in Tijuana. And it was incredible. It was magical and beautiful, and it just really captivated me. And I really started, it would be interesting. The vendors that were open in Tijuana, they would have masks of Rey Mysterio, next to images of the Virgin Mary and of Christ, and images of Mayan, like Quetzalcoatl and the Mayan pyramids, and these ancient mythologies, Aztec mythologies, all together. And it really, I started making artwork based around lucha libre, almost as like if it were a religion. I was making images of Jesus Christ wearing a lucha mask and his disciples as his trainee luchadors, and imagining that their lives, that the stories in the Bible were stories of lucha libre wrestlers on their quest for enlightenment, and that all the apostles were the school, the lucha libre school that Jesus was training them. I didn't have a spiritual practice back then. These were really a lot about, it was in a spirit of exploration and fun. And I found that a lot of Mexican friends and people really enjoyed this series that I was doing. I created a piece called The Last Fiesta with all these lucha libre wrestlers at the Last Supper. And so that became actually a very well-known piece of artwork that I made at that time. And when we were watching lucha libre matches in Ybor City, some of the wrestlers had, one of the wrestlers had that poster on his wall, knew about it. And so they were interested in meeting Monster and I. And at that time, I wanted to, just as for artwork sake, I wanted to really dive deeply into Mexican culture and into lucha libre. He was a big fan of lucha libre, and I wanted to start creating my own masks and my own characters. And so we were watching these matches with some wrestlers like Jay Rios and Cruz, and John Cruz, and these incredible matches with these guys, and some female wrestlers as well, and we were just blown away by the matches and their superhuman seeming abilities, the flow states that they had to enter. I was just in awe of seeing these matches and the acrobatics and the things that they could pull off, they had to be in just deep flow states, and the amount of pain that they could endure and how many matches they were performing within 1 week even, and I just saw that as a superhuman feat. And I became really interested in the sort of spiritual nature of what it takes to enter flow states, and really wanting to work with wrestlers. And so Jay Rios, the first wrestler that started working with, he was interested in wearing a mask, and I was interested in creating a mask. And so we created this first, Monster and I created this first character, Oraculo, the Oracle. And Jay Rios took on this character. We worked with mask makers from Mexico to create these masks. Lindsay Dorado created the first sets of masks and ring gear for Oraculo. And he's an incredible luchador. He was even wrestling in the WWE for a while, and he was trained by El Pantera in Mexico City for mask making. So we were over at his house, I was drawing up these mask designs like Peter Parker making Spider-Man, and he was sewing these masks and creating these personas. And so then this idea really, it started with myself and Monster, and our friend Casey Paquet came on board. Casey Paquet, good friend of mine that has now passed away, he was always sort of my enabler. My wife also was a big support of me. I know I drive her crazy with these things that I would get so obsessed with, but Casey Paquet and my wife Michelle, they were sort of the backbone and the courage that I had, because they helped me with a lot of the logistics that became involved with these projects and ideas. But I started working with another good friend of mine, a photographer named Todd Bates. So we had our first luchador, we had our mask, we had our character, persona. Mike was writing the story, the mythology, and creating the character persona for Oraculo and the name. And so we put our wrestler in this ring gear, in this mask, and then Todd Bates was capturing this aerial photography. We went back to the bar in Ybor City that had the wrestling ring set up, or that we were watching wrestling in. We asked them if we could come back and set up a giant trampoline, and we were shooting aerial photography with our luchador and all these action poses in the air, and those became the reference photos for images that I was drawing and illustrating. One thing led to another, this long story. I'll try to cut it a little short, but we ended up doing 2 big shows with these luchadors, and ended up working with a total of 6 wrestlers, one that I had flown in from Tijuana to wrestle against one of my creations, or one of our creations. And we ended up doing these 2 big shows with live, it was like musicians, with ring announcers, with projection mapping, a professional lighting setup, transformed this 100-year-old theater into the most beautiful place to experience wrestling. There was a costume, incredible, a friend of mine, Defense Mechanism. She was creating these really over-the-top ring entrance costumes where the wrestlers were walking out with other characters on stilts, and it was just so fun and wonderful, and one of the most beautiful fun things. And I'm working with different friends of mine and artists, and we all came together to make this happen. And then these wrestlers started wrestling for other organizations like Uproar and Serpentico, the villain character, now wrestles in AEW as Serpentico. I signed over the rights to the character. I told these guys if they wanted to continue wrestling with these personas that they could have them. Oraculo wrestles as Oraculo in Tijuana. He's wrestling under an organization called Crash in Mexico. I got to watch these characters wrestle in the same ring, the same stadium that my wife and I were in 2009 in Tijuana. I got to go back years later and see them wrestle in front of a huge, a packed audience. It was so incredible. And I thought I was actually going to be doing that. I thought that was going to be my thing. I saw that time then as the time when Lucha Libre was coming to the US and it was going to become very well known. I knew that was the time for it. I started working with an incredible couple of guys, Kevin and Ruben, Masked Republic, who have just dedicated their lives to helping luchadors, and they just have an incredible love and passion for lucha libre and luchador wrestlers, and they were helping wrestlers helping wrestlers from Mexico create merchandise and to get paid and to create licensing deals for products and masks and for art, posters and toys and all of this kind of stuff. And I really wanted to help out that culture, so I redesigned their logo, and I was making t-shirts for them and making posters and just helping those guys out wherever I could. And I wanted to really help out Lucha Libre, help it come to the US. And I was working with my good friend Kirst Mackey, who was we had wonderful pitch decks and videos and professional photography, and we had a full camera crew of sports television, multiple camera angles of capturing all of this. We had crowds that had never watched wrestling before going wild, and people posting, and I thought that this is what we were going to do. I thought we were going to create these pitch decks, and that we were, Kirst Mackey was showing them to brands like Corona and Modelo and Monster Energy, and we thought for sure that we were going to be continuing to do these Lucha Libre shows in bigger and bigger venues and creating more characters and more posters and more artwork and t-shirts and all of this around these characters. But as I know reasons now, it never worked out. The brands were so interested. The timing was perfect. I know it would have worked, but it just didn't happen that way. Some things happened where just Modelo was one of my clients. I was working on already ad campaigns with them, but for whatever reason, I know the reason now. It was because I was meant to be going deeper and deeper into these spiritual realms that I was exploring, and the Lucha Libre, though I loved it so much, was going to be a distraction for my soul from the path that I was destined to be on. So I'm so grateful to everybody that worked with me on that, and I'm so happy that actually that project lives on through Serpentico and Oraculo. I'm happy that it happened, and it taught me so much. I always used that project, so many challenges and so many risks and so many things could have gone wrong on that journey, and so many things did go wrong. But my friend Monster, he was always such a great, he would always just say, something will happen, man, something will happen. And I always, we really enabled each other. Casey and Michelle enabled me in so many ways have the courage, and I always knew if they were behind me, that they were going to help me think about all of the pitfalls and all of the logistics and all of the ways that things could go wrong and what we'd have to do. And so through doing that, I really got more of an education than I got in any of my college years, and got an incredible education. And the way that I was thinking about it is that, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. And I felt that as I was walking there, I was walking across an invisible bridge. And then when I didn't know what was going to happen next, I just had to keep stepping forward, and that next plank of the bridge would appear. And that's exactly how it happened. When I didn't know how I was going to pay for things, all of a sudden my agent gave me a call and had this big project for brisk iced tea that needed to happen in a week. And then, if I could stay up all night for this week or 2 weeks, I could crank out this illustrations and do this ad campaign, and I'd have the money that I needed. And that was just happening over and over. I mean, I used all of the money I was making and putting it into these shows. These shows cost me, I don't even want to think about how much money, and they didn't make me any money, but I was scraping by. But the money would appear that I needed, and people would come out of the woodworks that I needed for lighting, for the ring, for all of that kind of stuff, meeting different costume makers. Kevin and Ruben from Mass Republic put us in touch. Ruben took Monster and I to a trip to Tijuana, or to Mexico City, and we got to explore this pyramid of the sun and the moon with one of the most well-known, legendary, famous luchadors of all time, Solar. And he took us on a guided journey up the pyramids, and we had dinner with him and his sons, and Solar Jr. and his wife made us all of this wonderful food, and we got to tour his mask trophy room and hear about stories as Ruben translated for us. It really didn't even feel like there was a language barrier there. It was incredible, and all these things just really lined up and taught me how to operate like that project. It taught me how to operate in a new way. And also during the second Lucha Libre event that we were throwing, my wife and I, as well as other artist friends, collaborators, we began another artist, Tess One, the three of us, and Casey Paquet, my wife, Casey Paquet, Tess One. We were starting this new journey with a mural festival called Shine Mural Festival in our hometown of St. Pete. And man, if I knew the amount of work that was going to have to go in, and the dedication that was going to have to happen, that we had to bite off in order to pull that off, I don't know if any of us would have pulled the trigger on that one. But we did, and we started that process and working with the St. Pete Arts Alliance in our hometown of St. Petersburg, Florida, which is an area that was hungry for murals and hungry for art. And we had a lot of blank tan white walls in the downtown area, and we convinced, and we pitched, and we convinced a lot of people that needed convincing into starting this mural festival in downtown St. Petersburg. And we took the risk on ourselves to start inviting some of our favorite friends and artists, street artists, to come start painting. Like, the first year was like Morning Breath and 1-2-3 Clan and Eric Jones, and we had all of these, Huxo and Vasquez came, and it was just there's so many others, Keratos, and all of these artists. I met Alex Pardee, and The list goes on and on and on. Of just our favorite wonderful humans that, cryptic that we brought, and to come and to trust us. And we had this experience with putting on these lucha shows, and then we moved into creating this team that really we just wanted to take care of artists and put incredible artwork on the walls in the area. Evoca One was there with us the first year. Axel Void and Leo. There's so many different artists, and so those two projects really helped shape my trust in the universe, that if we just kept moving forward, we could take these big risks, and that we would prevail if we stayed sweet and calm and happy amidst all of these trials and these things that we were facing, that we would prevail. And we knew that to be true. I mean, I'm not saying that we always, we were losing our minds a lot of times, but we would always come back to this strength within, knowing that if we were being bold, that mighty forces that were at work here. And I got an education in that I could never forget, and I would never be the same. And so those projects, that was what was happening along the timeline, and that's what the psychedelic experiences led me to. And when those brands didn't sponsor and make this financially viable to continue doing these Lucha Libre shows, and when I returned really from almost full-time work on the festival, doing all of my illustration work and everything late nights and working on the festival almost year-round, I began to, I took a break from working on the festival and went back into creating my own artwork more and more, and had time for my personal work and not just doing the client work. And those years I would begin working with, as I mentioned earlier, Daniel Brojas and we began working with medicine men and from Colombia for ayahuasca, that deepening my spiritual understanding, spiritual journeys. Working, then I had the opportunity to first experience Native American Red Road path with a member of the Lakota Native American tribe, with peyote and the sweat lodge. And I'll tell you what, that was no joke. The sweat lodge experience, I could go on forever about this, but basically it's a death and a rebirth experience. It is, you go into this yurt, this dome that is just covered in blankets, and then inside that dome is a cauldron of glowing red stones that they pour water on, and it just steams you. You feel like you're being boiled alive, and the guide is playing a drum, and we're ingesting the peyote, and he's chanting these rhythmic mantras, and we go through these different phases. We're chanting mantras, 4 songs, and then you would make it through to the end, open the door, let in some air, ingest again, close it down, put in more glowing rocks, and pour the water onto them, and just boil yourself, listening to 4 more chants and doing 4 sessions of that. And man, if you're worried about your body at that point, you will lose your mind. You will run out screaming. And so learning to go within and attune to the self, the higher self beyond the body, and developing this ability for calmness, even in the midst of some of the most difficult physical experiences, has been a really huge blessing for me. Also, I mentioned Wim Hof, learning how to sit in ice baths for long periods of time, invoking that inner calmness. So powerful. I highly recommend, if you can find a workshop, or somebody that works with ice, just attuning yourself to calmness and sitting in ice for long periods can totally transform you. It's a great practice. And discovering Bufo with a healer from Mexico. That experience with Bufo, 5-MeO-DMT, for me, it was almost like, I remember after one of mine, I was walking around afterwards going, spoiler alert, the answer is love. The end of this journey is love and bliss. That's where we're headed. So don't worry. That's the end of the story, is infinite love, and bliss is actually the beginning of life. And so whatever we're going through, just hang on. It's just a ride, and we all end in eternal love, light, and bliss. And I now know that 100% from my experiences with Bufo, 5-MeO-DMT, the highest slide at the water park, as my friend Chris Lee calls it. It showed me the end, and it showed me the goal, it showed me the beginning, and it showed me that everything that has happened to me has always been my higher self, guiding me, giving me opportunities, giving me challenges, giving me things to struggle through so that I would learn and grow, and to realize it's just a ride. Smile, stay calm, stay sweet, help people when you can, attune to this higher presence, be brave, be bold, and mighty forces will come to your aid. That's what I learned through those psychedelic experiences. And it was in 2017 and 18, when in my psychedelic journeys with psilocybin and meditation, that without the Bufo, which just completely, you have no choice. You are just you just go. It doesn't holding back is seemingly impossible. Your body may work it out and struggle, but your mind gets completely set free. But with my meditations and my psychedelic journeys, I was coming up upon these threshold guardians, passageways that I was feeling like I couldn't go beyond them until I had a proper guide, a proper teacher, a proper meditation practice, that I was coming to a precipice in my life, a passageway that I dare not cross until I had a teacher. And so I would find myself coming up to these places in my meditations and psychedelic journeys, and I would stop myself consciously from going any further. And I was asking for these ancient teachings to send me a teacher. And when I was asking for that, I was reading this translation of the Bhagavad Gita by Eknath Easwaran. And Eknath Easwaran has this incredible, he has these incredible insights and commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita at the beginning of his translation. And so I was like, I should read some more books by Eknath Easwaran. And I discovered that Eknath Easwaran had been a college professor at Berkeley who was teaching accredited courses in meditation to students, and he had a whole path and a whole meditation technique and curriculum around what he called passage meditation, which was an ancient way of meditating where you would select a passage of scripture that was really speaking to you, memorize it, and slowly repeat the words of that passage in meditation during your morning and evening meditations. And I started doing that. I was using first scripture from the Bhagavad Gita that I loved, then moving into scripture from the Katha Upanishad based on another book that I read of his. That was his translation of the Katha Upanishad. And it was, to me, it felt like my mind was an operating system, and that these were new software that I was installing by memorizing and slowly repeating this scripture, that I was installing new software into my consciousness, and I was allowing it to change me and to allow me to think differently and to attune to these ancient esoteric scriptures that would really begin to shape my life. And I selected this passage, I selected this passage from the Katha Upanishad, which is an ancient, beautiful, timeless tale of this a teenage boy named Nachiketa, that I opened the prayer with this, the prayer that is in this Katha Upanishad. Nachiketa, a boy that is wise beyond his years, who wants to know the secrets of death. He travels in meditation to the land of death to meet Yama, the king of death. And as the story goes, he sits in meditation in the land of death in his mind. He has traveled to the land of death, and he is sitting in meditation for 3 days, unmoving, without eating, without sleeping, without drinking, likely without breathing. He is sitting perfectly poised in this most inhospitable place, as Yama calls it, waiting for Yama to arrive. And Yama arrives after 3 days, and he's so impressed by this young boy that he offers him 3 boons or wishes. And Nachiketa, his third request, his wish for a boon, is that Yama reveal to him the secrets of death. This boy knew, even at his young age, that all material pleasures, all material gains die with us when we die, that Yama always comes and takes everything that we've gained. All of these material and physical things that we've gained always come, and he takes them away on our death, and then we die, our bodies die, and then we forget, and that we're reborn, and over and over and over we just continue on like this. And Nachiketa wanted this to end. He was asking, what is the secret to death? What is the secret to staying conscious beyond death? What lasts? What is eternal? What is real? And this third boon is this passage that I memorized, which is Yama's boon to Nachiketa, and his esoteric teaching of what lies beyond death and how to go beyond death and what is eternal, and the secrets to overcoming death and to be conscious through these lifetimes and to end this endless cycle of death and rebirth. And so I memorized this passage, and I would repeat it slowly it would take me a half an hour just to say it through one time slowly. And this just became ingrained into my consciousness. And one of the lines from the passage that I meditated on said, "Get up, wake up, seek the guidance of an illumined teacher and realize the self. Sharp, like a razor's edge is the path, the sages say, difficult to traverse." And so when I would say this over and over and over, I didn't really even realize, but what I was doing was I was calling out and asking for my guru to appear, the guru that is always meant to be my guru, the guru that I met during Bufo, that was leading me through my journey, that was always there all along, that was the one that was guiding me and giving me experiences and was waiting for me to call and be ready. And so it was later in 2018. It was after I had made this commitment to meditate every day and repeat this mantra, this passage, that I came across a book which is called The Essence of the Bhagavad Gita, because I loved hearing commentaries from different spiritual teachers on the Bhagavad Gita. And this one was written by Swami Kriyananda, a direct disciple of Paramhansa Yogananda, where he was channeling, and also Yogananda was, while he was alive, Swami Kriyananda was writing down the insights of Paramhansa Yogananda, or a fully realized being, a fully realized master, was giving his insights and his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, what it means and how we can use it in this age of energy. And that book, Swami Kriyananda and Paramhansa Yogananda, this book was just answering all of my questions that I had spiritually and beyond. It was touching on all the subjects that I had been mystified and intrigued by. And it was just so beautiful to me, and I just couldn't believe this book. And so in the book, it was Swami Kriyananda was talking about his guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, and his book, Autobiography of a Yogi, and Kriya Yoga. And so from that book, I immediately started listening to the Autobiography of a Yogi. And the Autobiography of a Yogi is Paramahansa Yogananda's own writing on his life and the path of Kriya Yoga. And it's just, it's so incredible, and it is a wonderful story, and it is a calling card for those who are meant to find Yogananda and to begin practicing Kriya Yoga. So as soon as I finished that book, I wanted to learn Kriya Yoga. I started looking online. How do I learn this ancient technique? Are there videos? Are there, can I read a book? Can I start taking, can I just learn how to start practicing Kriya Yoga? Realized there were no videos accessible online. There were no books that would teach me how to do it, that you needed to be initiated into Kriya Yoga through a Kriya Yoga master. This teaching, this technique needed to be handed down from teacher to student. And that's the way that this would happen for me. And so to begin my journey on the path of Kriya Yoga, I discovered that Swami Kriyananda, the direct disciple of Yogananda, who had written down the words of Yogananda in the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, that he had begun spiritual communities in 1968, and they have been training people in meditation on the path of Kriya Yoga to take Kriya Yoga initiation. And so I wholeheartedly I signed up. I realized that with adananda.org, online courses, wonderful teachers would teach me the path of Kriya Yoga through meditation practice, and that I could take a year-long study that would prepare me for Kriya Yoga initiation. So that was on April 4th, 2019. I began my journey. And I had been practicing meditation, in greater and greater it was very sporadic at first, and then building for about 10 years almost. And these courses at Ananda allowed me to start fresh as a white belt, as I had thought about it in martial arts, that I was starting with my white belt, and I was starting my training, learning to sit with proper posture, learning Patanjali's Yoga Sutras to really learn the basics and the fundamentals, and to be quizzed and to pass these tests to make sure that I knew that I was picking up the material properly, and to have weekly satsangs with the other students and teachers. And the first course that I started taking, I just fell in love with my teacher and with the process, and I gave myself fully to the process and the adventure and the challenges and everything that would come with it. I could feel the emanation of love and light coming from my teacher, so it really eased all of my fears and doubts and worry. And the great history of these communities and of Yogananda's teachings, and all of the wonderful fruit that I could see, and knowing that this practice dated back, and these teachings dated back for thousands of years, even thousands of years to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And so I knew that this was a true path with a true saint, a true enlightened master that would lead me to self-realization. So wholeheartedly I took these courses, and then within 15 months after, I finished within the year of the teachings, I took discipleship under Paramhansa Yogananda, and then about 15 months after I had started, I got to take Kriya Yoga initiation on, this was July 3rd, 2020, which is right in the middle of the pandemic lockdowns. So the timing couldn't have been better for me. I was able to take my Kriya Yoga initiation. At the time, I was painting a large scale mural and building locally, and then completing that, and then I got to just dive into my Kriya Yoga meditation practice fully, and that would heat up until the practice that I have currently, which is about an average of 3 hours per day, broken up into morning and evening routines, combination of pranayama and chanting and energization yoga, physical yogic exercises, and Kriya Yoga meditation. And it has just been an incredible gift and a wonderful journey. That 15 months of working with the practices, I will not say it was easy. It was one of the most challenging times of my life, but you see yourself as Arjuna in the great battle adventure of the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bhagavad Gita as a heroic warrior, and all of the nostalgia for the mud, and all of your past tendencies, and all of these parts of your personality, and the darkness becomes revealed, and it needs to be faced and confronted and overcome and let go of. And it, is a very, very intense year for me, and I'm happy that it's tough for family members and friends to realize the changes that you're going through, and really, I wasn't knowing where I was going, but I had a faith in it. I knew where I was going, and that's why I had faith in it. I knew where it would end up, so I was allowing all of these things to come up to the surface. I lost a lot of interest in the physical things of the world that I used to have interest in. A lot of the material pleasures like really didn't appeal to me anymore. So it can be tough for those around you to see you sort of changing and going into this cocoon. So I really went into this cocoon for a while, and this, today, recording this video, I was telling my wife this morning, is I feel like I'm fully emerging from this cocoon now. I have the tools. I know where I'm headed with this. And not that not that I have it all together by any stretch. It's just that I am now ready to be able to come back out into the world again now that the lockdowns have been lifted here for now. The lockdowns have been lifted and we're gathering around people again, and I'm looking so forward to coming out of my cocoon and to create artwork and to be around people again and to share and listen and hear from others and see everybody as my guide, as everybody as my teacher, and to really come alive this year. So it's a very exciting, it was a wonderful way to spend this isolation period, to really create very good habits that will last with me forever. Even when I travel now, like I got to put it to the test, traveling to see friends in New York and California, and to put these practices into use, even, traveling. Keeping my routines in the mornings, at night, and my friends and family and wife and everybody's been I get ribbed for it and things like that, but they've been very supportive and as I'm as this weirdo sort of breaking away to meditate. But you can do it, you can work it into a busy life. And one thing I'll say about it too, I didn't think that I could fit it into my life previously when I did have all of the social obligations and all of the work obligations and clients and all of these things. I didn't think I could fit it into my life, but it was strange. The more I would meditate, the more time I seemingly had, the quicker that I could come to creative decisions, the more time I seemed to have when I would spend more time meditating. I don't know how to explain it, but it really allowed me to keep doing that. So that leads me to where I'm at now in my life and in this phase as an artist on this journey. And so I thank you for being with me through this video, and for all of those who have been following along with me in this journey as an artist. I know it's so common for when an artist is no longer creating the type of work that you followed him for or her for, that it's so easy just to unfollow and move on. But so many of you have stuck by me and are with me along in this journey, and I look forward to continue sharing it. I was thinking one way that we can sort of interact through this video series is, if you have a question for me, if you'd like to ask something, record it with your voice recorder and then send me an email with a download to that question. Keep it very brief so that I can listen to them, and I'll listen to them and perhaps play yours on a video and answer your question. I think that would be a cool way to sort of have a question and answer. And another thing too is, like, on this journey now, I'm moving very much into paintings. I'm switching, I'm still doing digital work and screen prints and apparel and skateboards, but I'm doing a lot more painting, and I brought on my brother Matthew Parks has also been, and he's also a disciple now of Paramhansa Yogananda. I found that we had very similar journeys. We've been meditating together for years now, and I found that he had very good skills in painting. We've been painting murals together. Myself, Kat Gomez, and Matthew, we painted murals inside a permanent installation space here that has been almost about a year in the making project. Permanent installation space here in St. Pete at a place called the Fairgrounds. It is a installation called the Temple of Cosmic Balance, and it is based on threshold guardians. It is symbols of Kundalini energy, meditation, of Shiva and Shakti consciousness and energy, the harmony there of female and male energy that powers this universe. And it will be a spiritually interactive room. I have worked. I brought on my friend Manuel Mendez, one of my guides from psilocybin journeys, a sound healer. He wrote the sound, the ambient sounds, the Om Namah Shivaya soundtrack, and Om tracks that you listen to while looking into infinity mirrors and seeing a tunnel of light at the point between the eyebrows while listening to Om. And so Matthew and I and Kat, we all worked on paintings for this room, and stained glass, infinity mirrors. My younger brother Stephen, I collaborated with him for 3D printed cobras inside infinity mirrors with black lights, and that's something that I've been working on for the past year. And as I've been winding down my client work with advertising pieces and things like that, my brother Matthew has been transforming my garage into a painting studio, and I have been buying materials, different materials and paints and brushes, and creating images where he's been painting them and getting down the process and the method and which brushes, which paints. I paint on black backgrounds, so which paints are the most opaque? How do we need to mix pigments together to get the right opacity to cover black, and which metallics look right, which fluorescents look right under the black lights? And he's been experimenting, testing, developing the skills and the techniques, and then at night I'll come work with him. He'll show me what he's learned, I'll learn what he's learned, we'll paint together and we push each other. And so we've quickly developed this process for making very intricate sacred art paintings. And so we'll be doing more and more of that together. There will be offerings of paintings on my website along with posters and t-shirts with this artwork. And for each piece I'll be creating a video like this, much shorter than this one. This first one I wanted to get the whole journey in front of you just to understand where it came from. But each one will be shorter videos where I'll be talking about scripture. A lot of these pieces will be based on characters from the Ramayana or different deities that represent forces of nature, and to be able to talk about them, talk about how they have been teaching me as I've been working on the artwork, how to understand the symbolism in the pieces. So that will be what this video series will continue with. And I really thank everybody for following along. I can't wait to see where it goes. I know I'll learn a lot by doing these. I'm sure I'll have my brother Matthew on, perhaps some other of the Seekers of the Eternal, the physical group that meets here each Wednesday, perhaps other artists. We'll being able to talk about these things. So we'll just see where it goes. And I'm happy to get this one under my belt. It feels, I can feel the anxiety relieving after getting this first one done. So thank you so much for following along. As they always say with YouTube videos, subscribe and keep in touch with this, and leave a comment, write me a note, a question, record a question for me and send it my way, and I'll listen, and we can just stay on this journey together. So thank you, friends. Joy to you, and I will see you next time.